Again, my name is Bill McSalis, and I'm currently the Director of BGS Safety and Security. That's my phone number down there. So if after this presentation you want to get a hold of me, you can certainly do so. I think I perhaps know many of you. I've been around the state and I've presented active threat, active shooter presentations to many libraries throughout the state. You may be a little bit familiar with some of the material that I'm going to present today, but I also tried to change things and keep it fresh to the extent that I can. You also have to be a little forgiving. This is my very first webinar. Most of the time I give this presentation in person in a library, and for those that have seen me do it, I like to move around, and we move from room to room. We try different doors, and now I have to just stay seated in this chair and kind of behave myself. So I'll do the best I can, but I hope you'll be a little forgiving since this is my very first time. I do want to say that this training is trauma informed, and I want you to be aware of that. We will be discussing things about threats and threatening behavior. We may say the word gunshot or active shooter, and if that causes you some concerns based upon your previous life experience, I would suggest that you either not participate in this or call me or Joy, and let's see if we can't find another vehicle where we can present this information, but do it in a way that makes you feel comfortable. About active threats. I'm going to talk today about active threat and active shooter, but I'm also going to talk considerably just about what to do about patrons that are concerning, patrons that give you pause and you're not quite sure how to deal with them. But many of the things that have to do with active shooters also are the very same things that you might do regarding a patron who is behaving inappropriately or causing a problem. So normally I would show a video called Run, Hide, Fight here, but to make this a little less lengthy, I'm not going to show the video, but many of you have seen it, and I could provide a link to this video at the end of the presentation should you want to watch it on your own. I do want to say that when you first are aware of some concerning activity, and whether it's that you hear gunshots or screaming or just some shouting, don't be quick to deny your gut reaction. Don't let others talk you into being unsafe. If you think about a deer in your yard, if you approach a deer and you're walking around like this, what's the deer going to do? It's going to run away. The deer is not going to justify your presence and say, you know what? I bet that person really has a pocket full of corn and is there to feed me. The deer sees you coming away and sees you coming, and it's going to run away. But as human beings, we see somebody else that's giving us some pause, some concern, and what do? We justify every single reason why it's not really what it clearly seems to be. So don't let people deny your gut reaction for you. Okay, so stand by for 1 second. So I want you to also, before you take any action, you know what, Joy, it's all the people that are being admitted into the lobby obscure my slides. So I can't see the slides anymore as people are being admitted. I don't know if there's a way to adjust that, but maybe. So anyway, I want you to think about, before you take any action, just take a minute and figure it out and think, before I go running somewhere, is there a reason I'm running to the left or the right? If there's a reason I am running versus hiding, take 1 second just to figure out, what am I doing, and then proceed with your course of action. So when we talk about run, hide, fight, and those are the three, things that you want to do when we have some kind of active threat, I want to talk about running. What does that mean? It means get out of the building. And I certainly want you to be willing to lead by example. I hear in my slide, show children the timid what to do. I want you to think about those libraries that have a children's story hour at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? There's probably a bunch of preschool children that are there. Their parents have told them, you're going to stay here and we're going to behave, and you're going to listen to what the librarian says. But in case I have to leave, you are not to leave here. Well, could you imagine a scenario where the librarian opens the emergency exit, the one that perhaps their parents have told them, don't go out that way. And now you're telling that child, you need to come through this door where it says do not enter, right? Or emergency exit only. Could you imagine a scenario where you have to open a window and ask a child or perhaps another patron to step through the open window and go outside? And many times children or even some adults are unwilling to do that. So you may have to do that first in order to show them that you're serious. If your building has panic or lockdown buttons, certainly hit them on the way out. But I don't think you should waste any time escaping if that's really what's required by going back inside to hit some button or to hit some alarm. Just get out. We'll let somebody else hit that alarm, or we'll make a call on our cell phone, or we'll do that later. Getting out is paramount. Hitting buttons and alarms is not. So what's the next thing we do? If we could run, we're going to do that, but we're going to hide, right? So I like to call it active hiding. I'd like you to find a hiding space, but then find a better one. And I'll tell you, I'm sitting here and I can't help but get up, but you may be in the room and you hear something alarming, and like the first thing you may do is just hide behind your chair for a second, but you realize like this is an awful hiding spot, so people are going to see you, right? So we're going to find a better spot as soon as we can. But you realize that the first spot you have may not be ideal, but as the threat is coming closer toward us, imagine, well, frankly, in a library or a supermarket, something may be happening by the cashiers and by the checkout, and you're on the end of the aisle and you're looking up one side and it's got soda, and you're looking up the other side and it's got the chips. That's my favorite aisle, the soda and the chips. And anyway, the drama's occurring by the um, cashier, and you feel pretty relatively safe where you are because there's 100 feet worth of soda bottles and chips between you and the drama. But then the threat starts to come down the aisle to where you are. So where we were just relatively safe and we had a decent hiding spot, now we realize it's no longer a good hiding spot. So we may have to move. So I want you to realize you may be hiding, but you may have to find a better spot. I'm going to talk in a second about hiding in deep corners or behind cover, and also about how to barricade doors. So let's do that. So one of the things that I want you all to know is how the locks in your library work. I put up 3 pictures there. Many times I want you just to look at the very edge of your door. You may have a lock that's clearly part of the doorknob, but many commercial buildings, including libraries, have doors that have locks on the edge. So if you look at the first picture, there's nothing there. There's just there's the strike, but there's nothing there. So you're not going to be able to lock this door. Here's another door. I put both sides of it, but you may see that there's a key lock on one side, but there's the same key lock on the other side. So you can only lock this door, whether you want to lock yourself in or lock the other person out, if you have the key. But if you don't have a key, there's not much you could do on this door. So it would, you want to know that. Now, here's 3 other doors. If you notice the door on the left, there's a little rocker switch, and I could push it up or I could push it down. And I want to try that at some point. I want to play with that button and turn each door handle and see, like, what does that do? Does it lock both? Does it lock only one? What does it do if the lock is up? What does it do if the lock is down? If you look in the middle, same basic idea, but these are 2 push buttons. And so what happens when I push the top button in versus the bottom button? If you look at the door all the way on the right, it's got that same kind of rocker switch, but we actually have deadbolts on either side of the door. This is a lock that I had installed, and depending upon where the threat is, whether the threat's on one side of the door or the other, we could still lock the threat out with the use of a deadbolt. So at least become familiar with the locks that are on every door in your building. And for that matter, any place you go to. So if you decide that you're going to go to somebody else's library to have a meeting, or you're going into the town hall for a select board meeting, I'm not asking you to change the locks, but at least you could take a look at the edge of the door and see what kind of lock it is. And if it turns out that you need to lock that door at some point, you're very familiar with it and you know how it works. So if we're in a room and we need to hide and we need to barricade ourselves, well, listen, we may have to do that. We're going to try to run and get out of the building and create distance between ourselves and the drama if we can. But if it turns out that the threat is between us and our normal exit, maybe we have to hide in a room. So we could barricade doors. One of the things that many people do is they could pile stuff up against a door, but frankly, just the weight of some chairs and a table is not enough to prevent that door from opening. But what I did is I went into my lunchroom and I took those two tables on the left and I stacked them end to end. The room is only about 12 feet wide, so those tables are maybe 5 feet each. So I had about 10 foot worth of the floor space taken up by the tables. And I took the last couple feet and I stacked some chairs in there. So now I have one solid barrier going all the way from the door to the wall. You could push as hard as you want. You're not going to open that door. So for a door that opens into the room, that's a great way to stop that door from opening. The next one, I simply took a chair and I jammed it under the doorknob or the door handle, and it's going to be very difficult to open that door too. Last but not least, I just took a 3-ring binder and I kicked it with my toe under that inward opening door. And again, it's going to make it much more difficult. And perhaps I could do all three of these things. There's also just a regular door wedge. And I know this is kind of sacrilege to say, but you do have a lot of books in a library. And I was told that, you never want to bend the spine and all that. But if you just take a regular book and open it up all the way, it creates two little wedges, and you could use those wedges also to prevent a door from opening. Doors that open outward, you could see in these pictures, I just ripped some cords off the back of my computer, and you may say, well, could that damage the computer? Perhaps. But when it comes right down to it, if this means saving yourself and your patrons from some threat that's on the outside, I'd say just pull those computer cords and get what you can. I made a loop on the picture on the left, and in the picture in the center, I extended my loop through the door around the handle, and I'm pulling it back into the inside. And it's going to make it much more difficult for the person that wants to get in there to open the door. You might say also, well, can't they see the cord? Yes, they can, but it's better than leaving the door open, especially if there's no lock. On the picture on the right, I'm on the inside of the door, and I used a belt, and I'm extending it so that they can't open that door. Again, is this perfect? No. Is it Fort Knox? No, but it's better than allowing that door to be opened wide. So my belt is protecting that. If you do look, though, the belt is crossing kind of an open light on the side of the door. Yeah, that creates a problem. So if I could try to stay away from that as much as possible, that's great. Okay, I love this little trick. For if I'm on the inside and the door opens outward, stuffing a chair right behind that little door handle, that works great. Just this one picture kind of explains it all. I think every library has some portable, stackable chairs just like this, and by setting it up in just that manner, you prevent that door from opening. Many commercial buildings have scissor hinges. So when the door is closed, the triangle, the hinge opening seems to be closed. When you open the door, that angle opens up wide. So simply by taking my belt and wrapping it around the scissor hinge, I prevent that door from opening. Now, will it absolutely prevent it? Could it still open an inch or two? Perhaps, but better than it opening a foot or two. And if I also, jam something in that door like a book, and I wrapped my belt around the scissor hinge, and I took something else and put it around the doorknob. Those three things may be exactly what I need. Remember, we don't necessarily have to create a situation where we're barring all people for hours and hours from getting in. We just have to stop that person from getting in long enough for the police to come and address the threat. And that may not be very long. You may find yourself in a room where you don't have the locks, and depending upon the situation, it may be that I was in a meeting like I was here, and I just step out of the room because my meeting has ended, and I look to the right, and there's drama occurring right there. I had really no advanced warning. What could I do? Well, I ran back into the room, and if you look, I'm hiding in what they call the deep corner. It's the wall it's the wall that the door is on, but it's far into the corner. So in order for the threat to see me, they'd actually have to step into the room and take a hard look to the right. So I'm hiding there against the wall, trying to make myself small. You might say, well, how come you didn't shut the door? Well, maybe the circumstances didn't allow me to shut the door. But certainly, if I can shut the door, great. But what if the bad guy opens the door? Well, at least me hiding in the corner, as depicted by the picture on the left, means it's just that much harder to see me. On the picture on the right, I got behind a chair, and maybe that's even a little better. One thing, I'm not on my knees. I'm still on the balls of my feet. If you have to be on your knees for a while, maybe that's what you got to do. But if you stay on the balls of your feet, it's much easier to stand up. If you actually place a knee on the ground, once you place your knee on the ground, it's hard to just jump up. You're probably going to have to put a hand on the ground, another hand, then you're going to have to move one foot and then the other foot. So it's if you're able to, by not putting your knees on the ground, you're much more mobile and much more quick. Okay, so what happens if this kind of thing happens outside? Well, can this happen outside? Well, for librarians, do you ever have any events that happen outside? Do you have a tent or a movie night or an ice cream night or something at your library? Sure, but this isn't just for libraries. I mean, do we have children in our lives that play in rec softball and soccer and baseball and all those outdoor sports, and have parents ever behaved inappropriately? I think we all know occasions where they have. And sometimes they may even bring a gun to that event or something else that's dangerous, where we want to create distance between ourselves and the threat. So instructing your friends, your children to run into the woods or get behind buildings and vehicles makes a lot of sense. Put distance between you and your drama, and to the extent you can, put something bulletproof between you and the drama. A shower curtain is concealment that hides you. A big rock or a tree is cover, and that saves you from bullets. So I say, tell people, tell your kids, tell your friends, run into the woods as far as you can. And then they say, well, what does that mean? I mean, really go into the woods. I mean, if you could run a mile, run a mile. Um, Maybe you can't. Maybe there's better places to hide. But if you think about it, if I put a lot of distance between me and the drama, there's less chance of me getting hurt. Um, and when it comes right down to it, I would much rather look for a lost child than to recover a victim. So having your loved ones, run deep into the woods and just keep going till you get tired, that's really the better way to go. Um, the last part of run, hide, fight is fight. Fighting, we all kind of think of a scenario or in our minds where we might be fighting a bad guy. But I bet if I actually queried each of you, you'd find out that some people imagine that scenario a certain way, and other people imagine that scenario vastly differently. So realize that fighting is not always the easiest thing to do. We may be better just to run. I also don't want to create a bigger problem, and that is we have very liberal gun laws in the state of Vermont, and that means that there are lots of people that may have guns with them. And I certainly admire people that could be heroes, and you may address a threat. You may shoot the threat. You may shoot the bad guy. And that may be the complete appropriate thing to do. And in fact, you're a hero. But if you think about our state and how a person could be described, it may turn out that when they describe you and think about the people in our state, and we're a pretty homogeneous society, you may fit the description of the person who's creating the threat in the first place. So you went from a hero to a person that matches the description of the bad guy, and now you're standing over a dead person holding a gun. And what are the police going to do when they encounter a person who matches the description of the bad guy standing over a dead person with a gun, right? They're probably going to be addressing that threat too. So I want you to understand that I don't want you to create a bigger problem. If you do have a gun, if you wind up using your gun, I certainly want you to put your gun away in such a manner that it's not causing the police to be concerned about the gun that you have. So what can we do in a building about that gun? You know, one of the things that I tell everybody is that if we encounter a gunman and we're fighting and we managed to get the gun away from the person, I don't want to be seen holding that gun when the police arrive. Can we? And do we just want to kick it? I don't know that we want to do that either, but can I take off my jacket and put it on the gun and I put my foot on the jacket? Can I put a garbage can over that? Can I do something so that I'm not found holding the bad guy's gun, or frankly his knife or any other weapon when the police arrive, so they don't mistake me for the actor? All right. I want to think about this though. How can we prepare? I want us all to practice, at least virtually. So when you enter a new place, I want you to think about how many routes of escape do I have? So when you go to the grocery store or the department store or any other library, I want you to take note of, like, where are the exits? How can I get out of here? Where does that door likely lead to? Is it open? I don't know. Some of the things I like to think is, should I take off my shoes? So I remember doing this presentation at the Essex Library, and a very nice librarian explained that she had just gotten a pair of Dansko clogs, and they were very, very comfortable and can stand in them all day. And I said, well, can you run in them? And she goes, I think so, but I've never really tried. So we had a little drill where everybody got to their stations and somebody was at the circulation desk and somebody was in the children's area. And I said, tell you what, I'm going to blow the whistle and I want you to move, not blazing speed, but as quickly as you relatively can, and go to the door where you would exit. And let's see if we could do that. And I did that. And the person who was wearing the clogs smiled at me when it was all over. And I said, how'd it work? And she says, I took 3 steps and kicked those clogs off because I thought I could run 5 miles, but I never tried. And she goes, I couldn't run in them at all, and they were awful. So I'm like, oh, so maybe in your library, I want you to take a few quick steps with the clothes that you're wearing, including the shoes, and understand, could I run in them? Now, anybody who's dealt with little kids before and has stepped on a Lego in bare feet knows that hurts. And you might decide the clogs aren't so bad after all, if my options are stepping on a Lego barefoot or not. But when there's some drama that's occurred, whether it's an active threat, active shooter, there could be things on the floor. There could be bullet casings. There could be these things that get knocked off desks. There could be broken glass. So, shoes that you might say are good to take off, in fact, might be really good to wear. Many people ask, should I pull the fire alarm? And generally the answer is no, because the fire alarm summons the firemen and the fire department and firefighters. It does not generally summon the police. And also, I want you to be honest with yourselves. And the last time that you heard a fire alarm, did you immediately get up and exit the building? Or did you maybe look at your coworker and ask, hey, were we supposed to have a fire alarm today? Is there supposed to be a drill? And then you stick your nose outside into the hallway and smell for smoke and then look around. And then once you realize, oh, well, I see somebody else leaving. Tell you what, let me go back inside because it's cold for like 9 months in Vermont, right? So I'll just get my backpack or my purse or my jacket and get ready to go, because who knows how long it's going to be. And you don't get right out of the building. You spend a while deliberating, gathering the things that you may think you need. So many times pulling the fire alarm does not really elicit the response that we think. And then I want you to think about what you used to do when you were a kid with a fire alarm. Where did you go? Well, maybe you stood on the sidewalk in front of the building. Well, if we have an active threat like a shooter or someone who's got some other violent tendencies with a weapon, simply standing on the sidewalk in front of the building is not going to put enough distance between you and the drama. But pulling a firearm kind of puts us into fire alarm mode. So I think you have to be prepared for the firearm to go off. Somebody may pull it. Frankly, if they're shooting, there might be particulate matter in the air that causes our fire sensors to go off, and that may also trigger a fire alarm. But in general, I would not pull the fire alarm. I want you to think about how many people could occupy what areas, how many people could hide in this broom closet or this small area. How could I stop the threat from getting into where you are? Right? I want you to realize that you don't need to barricade for hours. You may only need seconds. And then the last thing is, what can I fight with? So I want you to think, if I really had to fight, does that mean like I'm going to stand up with the bad actor and I'm going to like punch him? I don't think so. I don't think I want to get that close. So if I really had to fight, what could I use? I could use a soda can or maybe hot coffee. Everybody seems to have some kind of vacuum sealed cup, or maybe they went to their local convenience store and they got a big styrofoam cup of coffee. Could I throw that? And is that going to completely incapacitate somebody? No, but if I could throw that hot coffee and the person kind of reacts, and then somebody else throws a soda can and somebody else has a flagpole or a chair, maybe we can coordinate our efforts and fight the person who is a threat. Again, what about a gun? We've talked about that. Guns make heroes, but also guns make us vulnerable once the police arrive. And I want you to make sure that you get rid of your gun, or at least reholster it and clearly show your hands once the police arrive so they don't mistake you for the gunman. I want you to practice wherever we spend time, because things may not work as they intended. And these are all things that I got from libraries from around the state. So some people explained to me that they would simply go into a room in the basement and hide, especially if they were in the basement already and the bad actor was upstairs and that was the way out, was on the first floor. I could hide like in the boiler room. I said, fine, show me the key to the boiler room. Well, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds are going by, and we've tried different keys and we don't know which keys to the boiler room. And it may not even be that that's the right key anymore, right? Do all the locks still function properly? Are the batteries fresh in the intercom system? I know a particular library where I said, how are we going to advise, how is the front desk or the circulation desk going to advise maybe the children's area in the back? And they said, well, we'll use the intercom system. And one intercom had 4D batteries from like the 1970s, corroded and everything, and the other ones had nothing. So it didn't work. But no one had even tried. So it's not. I'm not saying that an intercom system is the key to defeating a threat. I'm just saying if you're depending upon that as something that you're going to use in your plan, make sure it works. How many folks have a book sale near the 4th of July or some other major holiday, and they have items stored on the stairways and the hallways, and maybe you can't quite get through the way you need to, right? Do all the alarms work? Are pieces of furniture and equipment still in place? Those are all things to consider. So when the police finally arrive, show them your hands, palms out, fingers wide. Let them know that you're not a threat. Police are going to look at your hands and they're going to look at your waist area right here. And we call it the high risk area, right? So don't keep your hands near your high risk area, because that's where bad guys tend to keep their guns and their weapons. So keep your hands out where they could see them. Also, if you have a cell phone, if could this be mistaken for like look at my shadow? Could this be mistaken for a weapon? So I know we all love to have our cell phones. How about drop your cell phone in your pocket, and so that when the police arrive, we could clearly show them that we're not to be considered a threat. Okay. Don't touch the police. Tell them where the threat is and see if you could describe it in just a few words. And here's an important part. Don't expect their help. Police are trained that when there is an active shooter situation or any active threat, each and every gunshot could be another victim. So when I hear bang, 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 those could be 4 victims. Well, you hurt yourself, and maybe you really did. You cut your leg really, really good coming around the corner of a desk. You're bleeding pretty good. And how long do you want the police to be dealing with you when you hear bang, bang, coming from some other room? So, in fact, the police are going to be focused on eliminating the threat, not aiding the victims. Eventually, they will be. but initially the response is going to be trying to get to the threat, not helping the injured. So what do you got to do? You got to help yourself. So I just put a picture here of a small trauma kit. This is not made for boo-boos. It's not made for sprained ankles, but it's made for like penetrating trauma injuries to either the torso or to the serious bleeding to the extremities. So here I have a small kit. It's that black kit. I put a ruler there for scale so you can see about how big it is, but it's got some trauma shears, a tourniquet, a chest seal, some quick clot, which is great for junctional areas where you really can't use either a chest seal or tourniquets. Um, those kits, depending upon where you buy them, whether you buy them put together for you or you assemble them, could cost $50 or $75. But if you have a few of them liberally sprinkled throughout the library, in the front, in the back, in the circulation desk, maybe in one of the offices that you think you might be likely to hide in, put them in there. My big orange kit has several of those. But if you're hiding from the threat and you're injured, and the life-saving trauma kit is in the hallway in someone's desk and you can't get to it, imagine what a tragedy that is. So having perhaps the friends of the library buy a few of these kits and you could have them put around could be, a very prudent thing to do. When police arrive, they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to go directly to the threat because they've provided some intelligence, like they could hear on the cell phones, he's in the library, well, he's in the math room, so they go to the math room, or he's on the second floor. Well, they're going to go right up to the second floor. They're not going to mess around searching the first floor. They're going to go right up to where they think the bad actor is. But sometimes they don't know. And if they don't know, then they're going to conduct a very methodical search. So it's going to happen one way or the other. They go direct to threat or they do a search. Either way, it's probably still going to take a long time and they're not going to stop to help you, at least not right away. So having the ability to help ourselves is important. Many of our local EMS and fire departments are willing to provide like a stop the bleed class. I know that they're commercially available too, and many times they're free. So looking for a stop the bleed class for your library, also something pretty prudent. After you've escaped the drama, clear of the threat, remember bullets could travel a long way. I would consider having a rally point somewhere. Libraries, if you think about coordinating with your town leaders and finding a place where I could evacuate the patrons of the library to another building in case there was some threat in our building. I've got to think about how many times it's really cold in Vermont. So just running outside might be good, but being able to go and head for another particular building where we know we could warm up. Even after the threat is over, we may not be able to go back into the library for hours. So where are we going to go in the meantime? Having an agreement with another building where we know we could seek some safety and some warmth while the dust is settling and all this is important. Having a list of employees and their contact numbers in your wallet or purse is also important. Think, if you lost your cell phone, can you call the people that you rely on, members of your staff and member of your family? Do you really have those numbers memorized? I know I don't. So I keep those numbers written on a piece of paper in my wallet, which I generally have. So even if I lose my phone, I can still contact those people that I would need to contact in the event of an emergency. Okay, so here's a couple things. I've heard about ALICE training. What's that? Well, ALICE has recently changed. Their acronym is just ALICE. It doesn't stand for Alert, Lockdown anymore, but those are the things that it does stand for in the past: Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, Evacuate. Many people that I've talked to, they don't know what ALICE stands for. The training itself, I believe, is very good, and it's very similar to the run, hide, fight training that I provide and others provide. It's just that many people can't remember what the ALICE acronym means. But if your child or others on your staff have taken ALICE training and you've taken like a run, hide, fight from me, it's virtually the same. It's the same type of information. What should I do with my family? Do we have a rally point? These are all things I just want you to consider. What do I do with my cell phone? You could take your cell phone, you can call 911, and you could just put it in your pocket. You could let the police worry about, or the dispatcher worry about hanging up. You don't have to worry about that. If they want to hang up, they can hang up. Can I break stuff? What's the answer? Can I break stuff if I need to save my life? Absolutely. we'll get you another computer, because if it's your life versus a computer, like, we'll get you another one. If I have to tip a bookcase over in order to, make sure a door doesn't open to save my life, to make sure the bad guy doesn't get in, yeah, I think we could tip a bookcase over, and we'll worry about the consequences of that later. And I think we've already talked several times about what I could do if I have a gun. So now, what do I do if I have concerning patrons? What's that? Well, I think we all have patrons in the library that sometimes cause us concern. So if that's a transient person and they cause us no concerns, fine. I'm not against transients using the library at all. It's certainly not. But there are some people that have like a mental health crisis, and they may be having it in our library, and it may be somebody who would otherwise like fit that description, or it may be somebody who maybe not generally fits that description, but that person is having an episode at our table, and it's causing us some concern. So what do we do? Well, let's figure it out. I call it taking their temperature. So one of the first things I'm going to say is, hey, to my fellow librarian, hey, you know what? I'm going to go check out this person and see what's going on, because their behavior is concerning me. One of the things I could do is I could have a clipboard, and it could be a clipboard where you take some tape that it's highly visible, like international orange or lime green. You put it on the tape, and my simply showing you the clipboard with the tape might be enough for you to understand, oh, Bill's going to go check out that concerning activity. He has the clipboard. I know what he's going to be doing. So I'm going to go and talk to that person. I'm going to make sure that I have a path for my own exit in case things break bad and they don't go quite as well. I want to make sure I have a line of sight. When I'm dealing with the person that's causing me the concern, I want to make sure that somebody else is watching me. So if things break bad, they could call 911, because I may not be able to, or I might be fully engaged with this person trying to de-escalate the situation, but the other person watching me might see what's going on and realize, you know what? I think I should evacuate the library while Bill is dealing with that person of concern. So having someone watch me is good. So what happens though if my action goes around the corner? Well, someone needs to come up to the corner and kind of watch me, and then someone else needs to watch them. So we all kind of have this line of sight, so that if something breaks bad, someone closest to the phone could see, the action happening, or I could at least see someone else who could see the action happening. And when they turn around and they wave to me, or they say, get on the phone or call 911, I understand what to do. When I confront the person in distress, I just want to be able to make an evaluation and recognize the need for emergency action or not. Let me tell you a little story about the FBI. Oh, let me back up one. Um, the FBI maintains statistics on bank robberies. They don't maintain statistics on banks that were almost robbed, but weren't. But I got to tell you, there's a lot of anecdotal information that I have that says there's a person of concern walks into a bank. They're standing maybe where they would be writing out a deposit slip or some desk. Maybe it's a classic thing, like it's a 90-degree day and they're wearing an overcoat or something, and something is just very suspicious about this person. So a branch manager go up to that person and simply say, hi, how could I help you? And that person says something like, yeah, and then turns on their heels and leaves the bank. It's happened time and time again. So you might say, well, I don't know what was going on there, but if the person really was going to open up an account or make a deposit, I think they would have been able to, have a friendly bank teller who said, hi, how can I help you? They could have just said, yes, I'd like to open an account. I don't know how to do it. But instead, I think what truly happened is they had in their mind, I'm going to rob this bank. I'm going to hand the person the note. I'm going to rob this bank. I'm going to hand the person the note. I'm going to get the money. I'm going to leave. And simply by disrupting their thought process, by introducing yourself and saying hi, we stop that. So in a way, I also want to do that in the library. If I see a person who's kind of ruminating and maybe thinking about doing something bad, or their behavior is concerning me, simply walking up and saying, hi, how you doing? What could I do for you? Might be enough to disrupt that thought process, or at least have you make an evaluation. So you may see a person that causes you concern. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a person with violent intent, but you may see me. You might see a person wearing a shirt and a tie, 55 years old, walk into your library, and I'm crying and I'm muttering to myself. And you say, you know what? I've seen a lot of stuff, but that looks unusual to me because I don't see a lot of adult men crying at the library. And so maybe you walk up to me and you say, hi, how you doing? What can I do for you? You look like you're in some distress. And I say, what business is it of yours? Leave me alone. You're harassing me. And then you might say, like, whoa, that wasn't my case at all. Or I might say, you know what? I just got some very distressing news. I was served with some divorce papers, or a family member is sick, and I simply came in here to get a book on oncology because I want to learn more about cancer. And then just by getting some feedback from the person, you understand, is this a person that I need to watch more, or is this a person who is, yes, behaving differently than I would expect, but I really realize now there's probably not a threat. I believe I could de-escalate the situation. So when you go make an assessment, here I am. I don't know if you can see well, but that person sitting at the table is reading a book and they're holding a wrench. I don't know why they're holding a wrench. Maybe there's lots of excellent reasons why you brought a wrench into the library. But I don't know. So I'm gonna go check it out. So I'm gonna go ask a person, hey, I see you have a wrench. What's going on? And they can say, you know what? I just came out of my car. I was trying to fix something, and I'm looking up in this auto mechanics book about how to fix something. And or you know what? I was working all day. I had the wrench in my pocket, and I sat down, and it didn't feel very comfortable, so I just happened to place it here. But then you realize, maybe the person was trying to dismantle part of the library too. So I don't know what's going on with the wrench, but I just thought I'd ask, right? But what did I do? I walked over. There's still a little distance. I'm not calling from across the library, but I'm kind of approaching the person. I'm getting down a little bit, not completely, but to get a little closer to their level. But notice I have a chair between me and that person. So if things break bad, there's a table and a chair. I could also use that chair to move. So if the person comes around the table, I could put it between me and the actor. There's a clear path to the door so that if I need to escape out that door, I can. So is this the perfect example? No, but I'm just trying to show you, like, hey, this is a way that I might approach a person who's concerning me, as opposed to sitting right down next to them or kneeling next to them before I kind of understand where we are. Um, so what can we do? Um, I want to make sure that I disengage from any direct threat. If that person wants to hurt me with that wrench or something else, um, I like being able to disengage and get away. I also realize that maybe I could distract that person while the people that have my back, those other people that are maintaining that line of sight, help others in the library to run, hide, or fight. Does it have to be like a gun? Well, maybe there's that person with the wrench is really causing me some concern. I said, hey, I happen to notice you have a wrench with you, and they start swearing. And what is it? What is it of concern? Is it of yours? And I'll do whatever I want to do. And they're banging the wrench on the table, and you realize, yeah, this is not an active shooter, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want to subject all the other patrons around, and I don't really know where this is going. How much is this going to escalate? So maybe I want to get some of the other people that are in the surrounding areas and get them out of there. So it may not be a true run, hide, fight, but it may be more of a let's evacuate to a safer part of the building. Or maybe it's frankly true run, hide, fight. So what else could we do? We could install and know how to use panic buttons. Those same buttons that used to be on the I've fallen and I can't get up commercials, right? You hit that button and it calls a local monitoring center who could make whatever calls you tell them to make. So you could hit the button and they could call the police. They may also make a call to the library director or other people on the staff, or anybody you want. So you could just work that out with the monitoring service. And they have these buttons that you could wear around your neck. You could wear them as a watch. You could mount them to a desk. So if you're in the library all by yourself at night, having a alarm that you could take with you, so you could hit it on your pendant or hit it on your watch when you're going into the dark part of the library and it is at night. Maybe you want to make sure all the patrons have gone, but you're not sure. Having a panic button that you can take with you is a good idea. Again, know how the locks work, but we've already had a slide to talk about that. Know which rooms are like the go-to rooms. If I knew I had to get out, which exit gets me out the best? If I couldn't get out, which room do I want to try to hide in? Is there one room that has a lot more glass and one room that has a solid door with better locks? Know which they are. And I also want to develop a policy for disruptive behavior. So I've been asked many, many times, like, well, what are we going to do? Frankly, you need to work with your select board and maybe your general counsel for the town. But what I'd like you to do is, if there's decide what you could tolerate. So if it turns out that foul language is a no-no, or spreading your stuff just too far and wide, so you're covering an entire table such that other people can't enjoy the use of the library because you're taking up too much space, or if you're shouting, or if you're behaving in a threatening manner, our policy says that we won't tolerate that, and we're going to call the police and have to ask you to be removed. If you don't have such a policy, it could seem arbitrary. Why did you ask me to leave? Simply because my clothes aren't nice enough, or because the color of my skin, or because I'm a transient versus a homeowner? So if you have a policy that says, we didn't ask you to leave because you're transient, or we didn't ask you to leave because of the color of your skin or your or anything else, or your age, we just asked you to leave because you're creating an environment that doesn't allow others to enjoyably use the library, that's why we're asking you to leave. So having a policy, not a bad idea, but I would certainly discuss it with your library staff and the select board from your town. The last thing is, if we do have an event that causes concern, I would conduct an after action review. As soon as kind of the dust settles, it might be that same day, might be the next day, but whatever that concerning event was, I would get all the staff in the library that were there at that time and really discuss it and try to just figure out what were your strengths and what were your areas for improvement, and talk about them. Some people are going to be so close to the action that they're only going to see what happened with the actor. But others, maybe farther back, will realize, you know what? Nobody had that clipboard, or I have a clipboard, but I didn't write the instructions about what we should do on the clipboard. Or maybe even having that policy with us right on the clipboard so that I could show the person, hey, you can't use excessive noise in the library, or you can't use foul language. I could have it right on the clipboard, and I didn't have it. Maybe I tried to use my panic button, but the batteries were dead or it didn't work right. So having an after action review with all the people involved, it's a really good idea to capture what happened and figure out how you're going to address it. And then the last thing about an after action review, if you do have anything that you want to address, like check the batteries, or you don't even have a panic button, I want to go arrange for that, put a date on there so that next month when we have our next staff meeting, we'll refer back to the after action review and say, okay, it's been 30 days. Did anybody contact a panic button company, monitoring company, to see what we could do? Did anybody make sure we change the lock on that door so it works properly? That kind of thing. And so I'd say go back to basics. If there's a known threat, call it out. Hit panic and lockdown buttons when we can. Call 911 when it's safe to do so. And there's no need to be sneaky. If a person's causing a big problem, just say that. Like, hey, everybody, I need you to get out. We have an issue, concerning issue here. Everybody needs to come with me. And you don't have to be super sneaky. So the last thing I would say is if this causes you some mental anxiety, and you need to think about this tonight, certainly the state offers their employee assistance program, 211, contacting your local mental health agencies, not a bad thing. And I plan to stick around with Joy, and I'm not leaving my job anytime soon. So if you do have questions, I'm happy to address them. So Joy, why don't we see if there are any questions? Were there any in the chat?
There were no questions in the chat. Catherine did mention that phones have an emergency dial function, and to set those up and practice with them. So that was a good tip, especially the practice with them part. I believe that I have enabled mics for people. So hopefully you'll be able to unmute and ask a question if you would like to. I would ask that you use the raise hand feature, which is up. For me, it's on the toolbar on the top, but it just looks like a little hand. Just because there are about 60 people here. So if anyone has questions, okay, Coco, can you try to unmute?
Yep, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Hello. I was curious if you could share a little bit more information about panic buttons and how those work in terms of getting them installed. And do you go through a police department? We're a small library in Bristol, Vermont, and we do have a local police, but they are not 24 hours. So there's the Vermont State Police and the local police. And in the past, we've had some challenges getting a timely response to the library, because when you call the Bristol police, it often goes to a voicemail. So you have to call 911. Anyhow, I'm curious about a panic button for a more immediate response and how you go about finding how to get one installed.
Well, there are monitoring services. I know the state actually contracts with a particular monitoring service, but there are various monitoring services around, and it costs, maybe about $25 a month for your service, depending upon what you get. And the panic buttons themselves work like on a Bluetooth technology. So wherever you are in the library, it's going to send a Bluetooth signal to a base station, and that's going to actually make the call out for you. And then when you contract with the monitoring service, they'll call whoever you want. And these are excellent questions. So for example, they could be told to call 911 or call the local police, and there's a whole list. Like if the first person doesn't answer at the local police, then I'd like you to call this particular barracks of the state police. And if they don't answer, then I need you to call the sheriff's department. They'll go through a list of people that they want, a protocol. And if the police aren't answering, they could call specific people that you've designated in a particular order. So you could really, talk to the monitoring service exactly how they're going to contact the police and in what order and who they're going to call. But they're happy to work with you. So that's kind of how they work. But I feel your pain, right? Like if you call, the local police may not work overnight, or they may be shorthanded, and you want an immediate response and they're not there. That's challenging. I do know that there's armed and unarmed security that can be hired, but depending upon what you're getting, it could be expensive. It's not unusual for them to be at least $30 an hour. And that's even for an unarmed security. So that may not be something that you're interested. And you could contract, for example, with a local sheriff's department, but they're going to be expensive too. And I know that many times they're shorthanded as well. So it's not an easy problem to solve.
Yeah.
I certainly understand.
Contracting with somebody to have security at the library is way beyond any budget of any library in Vermont, I imagine.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to tell you what's available, but I completely agree with you. It would be very, very challenging to come up with that solution.
Well, thank you for the information, and just to be clear, so it'd be something that we contact. It's through the state that the state contracts with somebody for panic.
I mean, you could contract with any alarm monitoring service that you want. We use one that's called, I know the state contracts through one called Home Security.
Home security. Okay.
But you're welcome to use whatever you want, but I know they serve us pretty well.
Thanks so much.
Just to clarify, Coco, I don't think he means that a library would contract through the state. It would just be, you would find someone who would do this work.
Correct.
I just want to say also, Coco, when Bill and I were prepping for this, I asked the same question about the panic buttons because I was imagining a rural library and the police force not being anywhere near. So it was really, I didn't realize that you could just pick whoever you wanted. So that's really helpful information. Any other questions?
Well, I'll tell you, it was my pleasure. Thank you for participating today, and I hope that this went well for you. If it did, and you want to talk further about any of the information that I provided, or you'd like me to come to your library and do maybe do an assessment of your particular library, or use this particular presentation and expand on it, or customize it for your library, I'm happy to work that out with you. Get a hold of Joy or get a hold of me directly, and we could figure it out together.
Well, thank you so much. I did put a link to an evaluation for this workshop, and this was great. And thank you for that generous offer to help libraries individually too. I think we all probably learned a lot today. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, folks. Have an enjoyable day.